Welcome back, dear viewers, to another installment of Pokémon, a month-long series dedicated to the unwarranted overanalysis of a series I should have gotten sick of years ago. This year, it's all about Unova, so let's kick things off with the 14th movie in the series, Pokémon Black and White. With yet another new batch of sidekicks, Ash and Pikachu head to Eindhoven Town to attend yet another annual festival during which they befriend yet another legendary Pokemon called Victini. While they bond with the latest cute thing, a traveler named Damon returns to Eindhoven Town and announces his plan to reunite the scattered people of the Vale, a plan in which Victini plays a vital role. But when Damon's plan goes too far, Ash must call upon the power of a legendary dragon to save the day, leading to a battle of truth and ideals for the fate of Victini and the people of the Vale. Oh hey, Black and White, a movie based on a game I actually played, featuring lore I actually engaged with, from a season of the anime I still wasn't watching, but I think you get what I'm saying. With the exception of Rise of Darkrai, the Sinnoh movies were a bit of a chore for me. Mostly because I was 10 movies deep at that point, and the phrase Pikachu Thunderbolt makes my eye twitch, but also because the Diamond and Pearl games never meant anything to me. Sure, Heart Gold and Soul Silver got me back into the games, but that was more about my nostalgia for Johto than any interest in what Gen 4 had to offer. And the only movie appealing to that nostalgia wound up being my least favorite in the generation. But now, having watched a movie with references I recognize, I remember how much the games can impact the viewing experience. They don't make the movies better or worse, but there's a bit of a thrill when there's a callback to a moment you witnessed as a player. And this movie helped me remember how much I enjoyed the lore of Gen 5, with its dragons and legendary heroes. The Western fantasy elements combined with the storybook tone help make for a more engaging info dump, which is good because this movie has about 50 minutes worth of info dump. Yeah, seriously, this movie is 90 minutes long and the plot doesn't even start until the hour mark. Though that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, I like the lore of this one. The story of two princes whose clashing worldviews led to a world-ending battle of dragons, the fallout of which could only be contained by planting a giant sword-shaped castle at the heart of the chaos. It's epic! Like actual Gilgamesh, Odyssey, Beowulf epic. That could have been the entire movie right there, but they gotta work Ash in there somewhere, so it's just backstory. But even as backstory, it's interesting the way the mythology blends elements of Western and Eastern folklore. I love it when Pokemon crosses the hemisphere like that. It's one of the reasons I liked Lucario in The Mystery of Mew. And even when the flashbacks end, watching the same conflict play out in present day evokes that same sense of grandeur. I even got the occasional Miyazaki vibe from it. Not quite Spirited Away, more Howl's Moving Castle. You know, because there is a moving castle. I'm normally dubious of movies past 2000 that try for these large-scale stories, but this one kinda pulls it off, maybe even better than 2000, even if the first half is just spent watching Victini be cute. Okay, I know this is normally where I mention Celebi and start comparing this movie to Pokemon Forever, and yeah, I'm still gonna do that. It's taken 14 movies, but I think I've finally gotten to the core of the cute legendary problem. With the exception of Mew, the cute thing is always factored into the antagonist's motivation. And because it's always the same formula, determining if the cute thing is worth caring about depends on Ash and the gang's reason for intervening. A weak example being gotta get Shaman to that flower garden, a strong example being gotta let May bond with her fish baby. The more personal the connection, the more endearing it is, which is something they never got right with Celebi. It always boiled down to gotta protect the forest from the shark guy, which is noble, but it's not very compelling. And they almost fell into the same trap with Victini, except they gave Victini motivation. Instead of like me because I'm cute, it's pity me because my friend died and left me trapped in a castle for 1,000 years, and come on, man, I just want to see the ocean. And Victini actually does something for the main characters, instead of just basking in their bottomless supply of adoration. Not only does Victini help Ash cheat to win a contest, but spoiler alert, Victini sacrifices itself in a fiery blaze of glory to save the day at the end, before promptly coming back to life because this is a Pokemon movie and consequences aren't a thing. All that almost makes it worth sitting through multiple scenes dedicated to playing and feeding it cookies and
Victini's having fun.
That. Oh no, Ash, you were playing too rough with the magical cat. This is conflict. But hey, at least stuffing Victini full of carbs gives Silence something to contribute. Yeah, let's talk about Ash's new companions, shall we? First we have Iris, who likes dragons and has a catchphrase.
What a kid.
And Silent, who's a Pokemon connoisseur. Whatever that means. What, does he eat Pokemon? Of course not, that would be interesting. He just compares everything to food and is literally the worst.
This area is as sweet as ripe fruit.
So if you liked Brock but hated all that pesky charisma, Sylin is the sidekick for you. Yeah, don't expect me to talk much about these two, they're just here to fill a quota. Back to what I was saying earlier, the movie has a lot of fluff, which I don't think is a matter of laziness so much as it is to accommodate a gimmick. See, this isn't just one movie, it's technically two. Same location, same story, but when it comes time for the big showdown, Ash will get a different dragon depending on which version you're watching. Reshiram in the black version, Zekrom in the white version. Which could have been a really cheap gimmick, but they put a surprising amount of effort into it. They didn't just swap dragons, each version contains sequences you won't see in the other one. There are two different versions of the main battle, two different prologues, and get this. Whatever location Damon is in at the start of one version will show up in the other version as part of a flashback. And it's not recycled animation, it's a completely different scene. That's a really cool touch. There are also scenes that are exactly the same but redrawn from a different angle with a different soundtrack. They even feature different Pokemon to match the version exclusives from the games, which is a concept that movies have never really played around with. For example, in one version Damon will have a Gothitelle, in the other he'll have a Reuniclus.
Reuniclus!
Stop saying it dumb. They were very intentional about building the movie around this gimmick, which is probably why so much of the story is spent on filler. They needed a simpler template that would allow them to swap scenes more easily. And while the differences may be superficial, it's a really fun way to incorporate the duality that's always been a big part of the series. At least that's what one part of my brain is saying. The other part kinda hates the way the gimmick hamstrings the plot and conflicts with the movie's main themes. The main conflict plays out thusly. The people of the Vale were scattered because their ancient dragon war caused a disturbance in something called the Dragon Force, which could only be quelled by moving their castle, the Sword of the Vale, to the heart of the disturbance. Having lost their homeland, the people of the Vale went their separate ways, so Damon wants to reunite them by moving the castle back. That, however, requires borrowing Victini's vaguely established powers, which could kill Victini, and Ash won't stand for that because he's Ash. And the thematic tension surrounding all of this is supposed to be between truth and ideals. Two values that come with their own corresponding dragons, but aren't really at conflict with one another. They're just different enough for the games to explain which dragon you get. They're not meant to cancel each other out, they just coexist, like the yin and the yang. That's why Black and White's legendaries are called the Tao Trio. But the movies have Ash and Damon rejecting one in favor of the other. So let's examine the difference. Truth and ideals. The way things are versus the way things should be. Which of those sounds more like Ash? Ash Ketchum, the scrappy, never-tell-me-the-odds hotshot who frequently ignores tight matchups and still believes he can one day be a Pokemon master despite having never won a single championship that mattered. Ash is an idealist, so if he's going to be worthy of either of these legendary dragons, it's going to be Zekrom. Even in the version where he gets Reshiram, they can't escape from that.
My ideals don't need sacrifice!
And the motivations don't even change between movies, they just swap labels around. Where is the truth in taking Victini to see the ocean? Or on the flip side, where's the truth in restoring your ancestral home? I know these are just vague concepts meant to create the illusion of depth, but the way the story is structured, the ambiguity doesn't hold up. No matter which version you watch, neither side of this conflict is fighting for truth. Damon believes the people of the Vale belong in the Vale. That's an ideal. Ash believes Victini should have a life outside the castle. That is also an ideal. If anything, it's a conflict between different ideals. Should Victini be sacrificed as a necessary evil? Is it naive to think you can achieve anything without sacrifice? Can unwavering resolve be a bad thing?
Fulfilling my mother's dream. How could that be wrong?
What would a conflict of truth and ideals even look like? Considering how lore-heavy this one is, they could have done something where the people of the Vale were divided by an ancient grudge, but then Damon comes along and says the grudge was never actually a thing, and the people of the Vale start coming together, but it turns out Damon was lying, but in this case it's okay to lie because sometimes an ideal society is more important than the truth, and now I'm describing the ending to The Dark Knight.
I'm the very best this city deserves, like no one ever was.
But they didn't need that kind of massive overhaul to make these movies work, they should have just made one movie. Both have a lot of the same flaws, but if I had to pick one that worked better than the other, it's the version where Ash gets Zekrom. Giving Ash Reshiram means he's just playing the magical tourist like he always does. But giving him the Ideals Dragon means that his part in this grand ancient tradition actually derives from his character. And in 14 movies, that would only be the second time that's happened. And sure, Damon isn't really pursuing truth, but he is confronting a difficult truth, so it kind of works. And with Reshiram being so dignified, they just kinda go well together. It's still not perfect, but from a character perspective, White is the better version, regardless of which dragon you think is cooler. And that only makes it more frustrating to see the story held back for the sake of a superficial gimmick. For the most part, the gimmick is harmless, but when it comes time for the big climactic showdown, the limitations start to show. The resources that would have normally gone to one sequence now have to be split in two, so what could have been a really amazing battle ends up being two very short, unremarkable fight scenes. And I can't shake this feeling that this could have been something really memorable. There's a little extra pep in the animation this time around, and it would have been great to see that visual flair put toward a fully developed action sequence, like Entei vs Charizard or Palkia vs Dialga. But they needed to keep costs down for the gimmick, so no tension, no drama, they just shoot beams until one of them loses, and then the stories go right back to being identical. Which again begs the question why this had to be split into two movies when they clearly only had enough good ideas and resources for one movie. Heck, some of them are even great ideas. What comes after the battle kinda kicks ass. After the dragons fight, they realize that moving the castle has disturbed the Dragon Force all over again. So they try to move the castle back, but Victini still can't leave, and Ash refuses to leave without Victini, and then the castle gets raised off the ground into the sky until there's a giant stone sword floating in space on which Ash is freezing to death, forcing Victini to unleash its full power and send an explosion through the stratosphere. Holy crap! This is no longer a Pokemon movie, it's a Rush album.
The sword of the veil carves the atmosphere. The dragons call you home.
And all of this takes place in like 20 minutes. There's an hour where nothing happens and then suddenly everything happens. It's jarring. I wouldn't call it bad pacing because even when the movie is taking its time, you always feel like it's building to something, and there is a decent payoff. It just moves so fast out of nowhere that you get lost. Oh, we're in space and Ash is dying. Okay, I guess we're doing that again. What is this, the third time? Maybe it's because Damon is such an understated antagonist, not evil, just misguided. Maybe it's the long drawn-out opening, or maybe it all just comes back to that battle. That lame battle. It's hard for me to form an impression of this one. I mean, it's a Pokemon movie, so it's obviously going to fall short in a lot of areas. Pacing is off, theming is sketchy, Ash's sidekicks are superfluous, but I wouldn't so quickly throw this one in the same category as Giratina or Jirachi. The gimmick hurts it in a lot of ways, but I can't look at these movies for what they are without seeing the one potentially great movie they could have been. The larger scale, the grand visuals, the epic lore. If they weren't so busy animating the same sequence twice, they could have capitalized on that groundwork to make something really memorable. And to me, this one still is memorable. I won't watch it again anytime soon, but it made the world interesting again. And it kept me looking forward to what else 5th gen had to offer. And by it, I mean the Zekrom version. The Reshiram version is dumb and didn't need to exist. I'm right, shut up. What other adventures awaited Ash and Pikachu in the Unova region? We'll find out next time with Kyurem versus the Swords of Justice. Next time on Pokemon